The north face of a Lebanese mountain didn't just collapse. It slid open to reveal a honeycomb of tunnels, fuel depots, and weapons caches, all lit up by secondary explosions. This wasn't nature. It was the result of a precision strike using 20,000 pounds of bombs guided through radar deception. The mission worked exactly as planned, but the aftermath wasn't as simple as victory. It set off an escalation that demanded immediate answers. 4 aircraft lifted from the runway in southern Israel, each hauling a weapon load that could flatten a hardened bunker. On paper, it was just another strike mission. But in practice, these 4 F-15 IRAM fighters carried a city's worth of destructive energy toward a quiet stretch of Lebanese hillside. Their assignment was not to hit a single facility or warehouse. They were tasked with caving in a tunnel complex burrowed under Beaufort Ridge, a site built to withstand outside attack. Bringing it down would not only take accuracy, but also the right combination of timing, deception, and brute force. Normally, an airstrike of this sort would be detected well before it reached its target. Lebanese radar coverage stretches across the border, and over the past years, Russian monitoring assets in Syria have made the skies even more crowded with eyes. This meant that a straightforward bombing run was unlikely to succeed. The jets had to get within release distance without revealing which direction they were coming from, or even how many planes there were. That was where the electronic countermeasures came into play. Each RAM carried the SPS-2110 suite, which could project false returns onto hostile radar screens. Instead of seeing 4 aircraft closing at high speed, operators were confronted with a confusing spread of decoys. Through a digital trick known as DRFM, digital radio frequency memory, the Israelis could generate phantom contacts that mimicked the radar signature of real planes. Operators staring at their scopes were forced to guess which blips were genuine and which were illusions. This made the jets appear like shadows scattering in every direction, when in reality they were converging on a single aim point in the ridge. While electronic deception kept enemy sensors occupied, the strike relied on another technology to ensure its accuracy. Hanging under the fuselages were LANTIRN navigation and targeting pods. These pods acted as the eyes of the mission, mapping the terrain with infrared and laser guidance even in darkness. Without them, the GBU-28 bombs strapped beneath the wings would have little chance of threading into the specific shafts in the mountain. With them, the crews could designate the exact impact points needed to cause collapse inside, rather than surface cratering. This is where the mission became different from a conventional bombing run. Against an exposed warehouse or a truck convoy, almost any iron bomb would do. But a subterranean fortress was another matter. The question hanging over the operation was simple. Would even the heaviest warheads actually burrow into Beaufort Ridge? Or would thousands of pounds of explosive energy simply shatter rock on the outside, leaving the tunnels intact? The weapon chosen for the job was the GBU-28, a 5,000-pound penetrator originally designed for Cold War scenarios. Its length and density gave it the ability to act more like an enormous metal spear than a traditional bomb. Dropped from high altitude, it built up speed that increased its piercing power. The casing was made from an alloy tough enough to withstand the initial impact and keep burrowing before the explosive core detonated. Inside, smart fusing delayed the blast until the bomb had reached a critical depth. That meant the destructive force was released under layers of stone and concrete instead of wasting itself against the exterior. A single bomb could punch dozens of feet underground before its delayed charge turned confined spaces into fire and overpressure. By releasing 4 of these munitions, the strike force multiplied that effect across different entry points of the tunnel network. The math was intended to ensure collapse, not just near one segment, but across the length of the main galleries. The result was less like punching holes in a mountain and more like making its skeleton snap from the inside. Now that you know how this mission harnessed deception, precision, and brute underground impact to shatter rock like glass, what happened on the ground after those bombs went off is even more startling. The explosions didn't just collapse reinforced structures, they tore open the mountain itself. Beaufort Ridge had been engineered as a redoubt, a safe zone hidden within layers of limestone. But the sequence of impacts changed all of that in seconds. The first detonations sent shock waves through chambers built for rocket storage. When those ignited, fuel reserves and explosives inside went off in a rolling chain of secondary blasts. What began as 4 precision strikes turned into an entire hillside coming apart, with violent plumes erupting as trapped munitions cooked off. The ground rumbled as if struck by an earthquake. But this was engineered destruction, ripping away what had been concealed for years. The physical transformation of the landscape was dramatic. Observers later described how the north face of the ridge seemed to slide outward, as though pried open. Tons of rock crashed down, leaving a slanted scar across the mountainside. Caverns that had been chiseled underground for decades were suddenly exposed to daylight. From a distance, it looked less like a targeted airstrike and more like an open quarry where the terrain had been carved away. Tunnels that once offered sanctuary to fighters were now visible from the air, their entrances jagged and smoky. For surveillance drones circling overhead, the change was instant. Targets once concealed under meters of stone were now plain to see. But the success on a tactical level carried strategic weight. Hezbollah had invested heavily in facilities like this, dispersing rockets, precision-guided weapons, and command posts beneath the mountains of southern Lebanon. By neutralizing such a site, Israel dealt a visible blow to its opponent's arsenal. The question was whether the cost of revealing it outweighed the gain. Because the strike was impossible to ignore, its consequences were never going to be limited to one ridge. Earlier in 2024, Israel had carried out a series of controlled strikes on weapons assembly centers in Beirut and other urban areas. Those operations were focused, often designed to reduce escalation by minimizing collateral impact. Beaufort Ridge was different in scale and visibility. The mountain itself had been reshaped, and the optics of such a decisive hit carried new risks. For Hezbollah, openly losing such a fortified storage complex demanded a demonstration of strength in return. Only hours later, retaliatory fire began across the border. Launch crews that had not been harmed in the strike let loose heavy salvos of rockets. Alongside that, swarms of drones were sent southward, probing Israeli air defenses. This was not a limited exchange. Analysts quickly noted the scale matched some of the heaviest barrages since the 2006 war. The destruction of Beaufort Ridge had forced the group into a large-scale response to demonstrate its capability and deter further attacks on hidden infrastructure. Israel did not stay still. Hundreds of sorties followed in quick succession, targeting launch sites, logistics hubs, and suspected storage depots. Each wave of flights added to the intensity of the campaign. The broader reaction extended beyond Israel and Lebanon. A U.S. Navy carrier strike group repositioned in the eastern Mediterranean, signaling readiness to respond if the conflict widened. Meanwhile, regional actors, including Egypt and Jordan, issued warnings about destabilization spilling over. The message was clear. This was no longer a single strike, but a potential flashpoint for greater confrontation. Here lay the paradox. From a purely technical standpoint, the attack had worked exactly as designed. The bombs penetrated, detonated deep underground, and exposed what was hidden. But the very precision and scale of success ensured that escalation was unavoidable. Instead of closing a chapter, it opened a wider one. The more exact and devastating the strike, the greater the pressure on the opponent to match it. The tunnels were gone, reduced to rubble and daylight. What lingered was the larger question: can a weapon this precise ever bring stability, or does it simply guarantee the next cycle of retaliation? A mountain can collapse in seconds under the weight of a few precision bombs, ending a hidden base, but conflicts do not fall as quickly. Each strike achieves a military result, while also carrying consequences that stretch far beyond the target. That raises a question for you watching. Does advanced technology change these wars in any permanent way? Or does it only raise the stakes each time it's used? What unfolded at Beaufort Ridge showed how even when the mission is a success, the outcome is another round of escalation, setting the stage for the next fight, not the last.